I should pack up and go home. How can you beat that introduction? My goodness, that was fabulous. So, you know, I want to thank Lana Ross and Jamie Whitney for inviting me to be here. You know, Bill shared with you that I'm from Missouri. I'm a Midwesterner, and you always like to be with your people, right? And so I just feel somehow it's so natural. I just feel like I'm home in Missouri today to be here. So it's great honor to be here. And as you heard from Bill, we have a long history together, so it's even more of a good feeling to be able to be with you today. I know I don't have to tell you that you have one of the best state association executive directors in the country. But just in case you weren't aware of that, I want to make sure that you know that. I always thought Missouri that had the best association director in Elaine West, who recently retired. But Lana Ross is truly an outstanding leader, and so you're very lucky to have her. There might be something about the Midwest, because I'd say a third really good state association director is in Minnesota, so it's kind of that corridor there, right? There's something about that. And Bill was very kind in his introduction about our work together, and we might be leaders of a mutual admiration society, because I have here in my notes to you know, say something about Bill's work across the nation. So, you know, I know that you're very familiar with his work here in Iowa, but sometimes you don't really get a sense of what happens outside of the borders of the state. And Bill mentioned that he and I were on the NASCAS board together for many years, chaired committees together, co-chaired committees, worked on a lot of different projects, monitoring principles and Roma and many different things. And we're in many kind of important national meetings together where maybe the Office of Community Service would come in, and we as the board at NASCAS were really, you know, questioning the feds about a particular issue, or, you know, asking that the feds do something. And so I really got to see Bill in action, and it was always this very calm, very knowledgeable, very thoughtful, committed kind of conversation that Bill led. And I will tell you that NASCAS really looks to him many times to be the first spokesperson in meetings like this. And I've seen Bill, you kind of wonder, you know, what's going to happen in this meeting. And Bill would just come out with this statement and initiate this conversation that would just set the tone for a very productive meeting. And so obviously you have a lot to thank Bill for in Iowa, but community action agencies around the country and state CSBG offices around the country have a lot to thank Bill for in his service over the years. So just want to make sure that folks recognize that, because you don't sometimes get to see that inside your state. Bill says he wishes his boss were here. Well, you know, have him call me up. You know, I've got it written down here, so I can say it again. We really are gathered here at a critical moment in our movement's history. You know, next month, on August 20th, we'll celebrate the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Economic Opportunity Act. And, you know, that since January, there's been a lot of talk about the 50th anniversary of the Community Action, or the War on Poverty, the Community Action Movement, the Economic Opportunity Act, here recently, the Civil Rights Act. And, you know, a lot of conversation about, you know, has that succeeded? Have we won the war? Have we lost the war? And we recently at ACF had Jared Bernstein, who was an advisor to the White House and to the Vice President, to our office, to speak on this subject a little bit. And he really reminded us that that's really not the right question, whether we won or lost. It's really what has happened to influence our fight against poverty over the years. And he really mentioned to us and pointed out that there's a lot that's been going on in the economy that really needs to be recognized if you're really going to think about this subject. And I thought, I'd talk a little bit about that today. I want to talk with you a little bit about what we're doing at the Office of Community Services to really strengthen this movement for the future, and then talk a little bit about what we think at the federal level is on the horizon for important and critical poverty work. So really important to think about, the economy and some of the things that have been really pushing poverty up in the last 50 years. And, globalization has been a factor, deunionization, lower minimum wages, slack labor markets, and really decreasing returns to lower-end jobs have all been pushing poverty up, while we in the anti-poverty field have been trying to bring it down. If you look at other things, since 1964, there's been an increase in the share of national income going to the top 1%, an increase in the share of families with children headed by single parents, and a decrease in the share of adult men who are unemployed. These various conditions and factors are pushing poverty up, and there are other factors that have been working with us in the anti-poverty programs to bring poverty down. Factors on our side of this 50-year effort that have helped push poverty down include an increase in the share of adults who've completed high school, an increase in the share of families with fewer than 3 children, an increase in the share of adult women who are employed, and an increase in the share of people who moved out of poverty with help from public programs. And we really do know that we've made gains, as seen in recent research using the supplemental poverty measure. Between 1967 and 2012, poverty fell by almost 40%. The average of 50 years, or really the advantage of 50 years, and new measurement tools like the supplemental poverty measure help us to evaluate more accurately the impact of the strategies, policies, and programs that we've deployed in the last 50 years. But now we really find ourselves planning policies and strategies for a very different economy and future. The planners of the war on poverty, those economists that were in Johnson's White House, really were planning all of this with the thinking that the economy would keep chugging along as it had previously. They were really thinking that the economy would continue to grow and a rising tide would lift all boats. But today, we really see something very different, and we're in a period where our current president has really declared that inequality and economic mobility are the defining challenges of our time. And you've probably seen some of the statements that the president has made indicating that we really have to commit ourselves to creating opportunities for every child in America, opportunities just like the president had. And it's a very different economy and a very different experience that we're looking at today and that our clients are dealing with every day. So the Pew Charitable Trust, as part of their work on economic mobility, indicates that 43% of Americans raised at the bottom of the income ladder remain stuck there as adults, and 70% never make it to the middle. And those Americans raised at the top of the economic ladder are highly likely to remain there as adults. It's a phenomenon that many people call stickiness at the ends. And researchers are really looking at and learning a lot about the factors that may promote this. Understanding these factors will really help us to determine what program and policy levers we in community action and in communities overall need to engage in. We can benefit from thinking about the range of factors and the intersections between these factors. There really are factors related to the economy with its growing inequality, emphasis on high-skilled jobs and high unemployment, and these often interact with family factors. family and demographic factors such as the promotion and support of education, race, family employment patterns, and saving